5:38, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Glad to see you made it back. We're gonna go over some of our rules of engagement. And that I would also like to strongly encourage you that, list of resources, the white pages that I gave everybody, and I've asked you to add information to, if you could please submit any additions, new hot meal services, new laundry services, anything that could be added to that. I would appreciate you bringing that to committee or informing one of the management here so we can add it to that list, okay? And until everybody knows, Riviera Methodist is no longer participating in any homeless program, so make sure that if you give somebody that, you point that out. Riviera Methodist, they were only doing, in the end, only one hot meal a month. And they're no longer participating, but the rest of the list is valid. Okay? Okay.
Here.
The
Here.
public.
Yeah. Yeah, there a couple things.
Make sure there was something I didn't miss.
I want to be sure that everyone, I don't feel well, so I'm trying to protect y'all, just in case. Sporting the black mask, I mean, I think it, it helps, no makeup, that's nice too.
They were doing gardening stuff outside.
Are you on? Am I on?
Yeah.
Am I on? Okay. And so we're looking at the last meeting and previous meetings. It's just a good time to go over some of those meeting norms and expectations, to reset a bit. And so just so you know, this is not Sherry's list over here. This is actually from the Lived Experience Advisory Committee's charter. And it's the shortened version. The longer version is in the agenda packet on the second page of the handout. And it goes in a deeper, a little more deeper into what each of those mean. But I just wanted to say, active listening, constructive feedback, so that we share when we are talking, that we're giving constructive feedback, not necessarily just, bashing, right? Timeliness. We almost made it today, but we're timely. We're going to speak to an agenda is basically what that means. That there's equal participation, so that if you tend to talk a lot, be mindful of it. It's good to talk. We want to hear everyone's voices, of course, but may step back a little bit and then let others who don't speak a lot step up. So if you find yourself not talking, take a chance and be willing to speak up as well. Obviously, avoiding any aggressive behavior, if it's just not allowed. This is a meeting space, it should be safe. Conflict resolution, if there's an issue, then there is a way in the charter to go through that, and so we can handle that outside the meeting. To stay on topic, so we have an agenda that we follow, that everyone sticks to that agenda, and then when we're talking on a certain topic, that we stay on it as well. Anything that goes off topic, we can mark that down as something that may need to come up again on another agenda, or during public comment at the very end of the agenda. There's always time to bring up any other issues that may not have been on the agenda. Use I statements. That's a little more difficult to do than to say, but it is always good to say, I believe this, or I think this, rather than you are. And of course, no discrimination. So everyone here is, especially the seated members, everyone is important, everyone is valued, and everyone is equal. So I just wanted to go over that very quickly as an opener, and Gary is gone, so I will hand it all over to Michael.
Thank you, Sherry. Has everyone had a chance to look over tonight's agenda, attachments, handouts, anything we need to change or correct?
Well, I was gonna suggest, Joe, July, one of the June meeting, we kind of have a mid-year review. So we see where we're going, where we've been, and where we want to go in the last half of this year. Because it's gonna be a pretty critical year for the homeless community. And the COC and the HLA this year. You know, and a mid-year review would be nice, you know, and see where we're on target for our goals. The only suggestion I have.
I think we can get that on the agenda. Probably a good idea to, you know, do a short, quick review mid-year as well as end of year. Okay, anybody? Anything? Can I get a motion? Silas, can I get a second? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Agenda passes. Any conflicts with the meeting schedule, please contact someone and let them know if you cannot be present at a meeting. It helps us to know ahead of time, in case there is something we do need to vote on. TV, want to talk about the VIT?
Thank you. Thank you. I am actually Alex Strider. I'm not TV. TV is sorry that she couldn't make it here today. But I'm Alex Strider. I'm the Director of Program Services at HLA. Thank you all for having me to discuss the Cold Night Shelter operations and point in time count. For those of you that don't know, the Cold Night Shelter program is a collaborative effort to provide shelter and safety to the county's most vulnerable residents during the coldest nights of the year. The Cold Night Shelters are pop-up shelters that are activated when the feels like temperature is 40 degrees or colder for a sustained period, which is 2 hours or more, across the county, meaning 2 cities or more, from the hours of 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So there are qualifiers there on activating those cold night shelters. We do monitor the National Weather Service, so we check on a weekly basis to see if there's going to be cold weather coming. If we get close to that threshold where there's a potential activation, then we are tracking that daily, sometimes multiple times per day. We also call the National Weather Service on the telephone in Ruskin and confirm and verify the cold weather standings to make sure that it does meet the threshold for activation. So there's a lot involved in before an activation.
The HLA also posted on the social media site and our normal COC emailing potential activation on the usually 4 or 5 days in advance, so.
Yeah, and then once we understand that it is going to be an activation and we verify that information, we reach out to every cold night shelter manager, make sure that they're aware of the weather, that they have all the supplies and the volunteers needed in order to open up that cold night shelter site. So we do have to speak with all of them before confirming. And then we, of course, reach out to all of our community partners, 211 First Contact, the Street Outreach, all of our jurisdictions, Pinellas County, to share out the information. And then we, of course, share it on our public site, the activation through news outlets, our social media channels. We post it on our website. We also send it out to all of our contacts on constant contact. So we send it out everywhere. And then, of course, community partners also distribute that information as well.
It did seem like it was a bit of a process in here.
Individuals can go directly to one of the shelters that's on those lists. They can go there for free on PSTA. They just have to tell the bus driver that they're headed to a cold night shelter. And then families, the process for families is they can call 211 First Contact for that cold night shelter referral. There are 3 family shelters, and we have agreements with all the cold night shelter providers, HLA and the cold night shelter providers. One of the goals for this season was to increase the capacity, especially in North County. That was discussed at our cold night shelter kickoff meeting. So I'm really happy to announce, hot off the press, agreements were just signed this week that we are moving the Tarpon Springs Cold Night Shelter location from the Boys and Girls Club in Tarpon Springs to St. Timothy Church, which is going to serve up to 100 individuals. So that's greatly increasing the capacity in North County. Also, for South County, Allendale Church will now be opening as an individual shelter provider to serve up to 18 individuals in St. Petersburg. Again, that's brand new information, so that will be take effect the next cold night shelter openings. Last season, the cold night shelters were open for a total of 10 nights. So it was a busy season last year. Cold night shelter season officially starts on November 15th. However, this year, we got some cold weather before that. And so we were able to shelter over 200 guests at the cold night shelters on November 10th. We're kind of a pre-season opening of the cold night shelter season. And then, as you all know, we opened last week on December 30th. Don't have the final count yet because there was a holiday in between there, but that was a pretty busy day as well. Outside of the activation process, HLA also helps to assist with volunteer coordination by connecting volunteers to the cold night shelter sites based on their need and location. And then we also manage a small budget and assist the sites with ensuring that they have enough supplies in order to open. I've been at HLA for over 9 years, but this is the first year that I've been so closely involved in the cold night shelter process and program. So I hope that I was able to share a little bit more information with you all to see how many players are involved in this and HLA's involvement in the whole process. TV is the one that manages that program. So if you want to volunteer or have any questions or anything, you can reach out to her. We'll share the cold night shelter program flyer and her contact information as well. Is there any questions on cold night shelter? Go ahead.
There are a lot of homeless people that live all over in the area where I live, and they want to know, there are places where they can stay till 8 o'clock in the morning and until 6 o'clock.
So with those agreements that we have with the locations, they're 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Because a lot of those sites open up, like Boys and Girls Club, they then open up to students, so they can't be open up.
Like the churches, they allow people to stay here till 8 a.m.
We have the set hours for it, definitely for this season from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is in the contract for the cold night shelter providers.
And it would be up to them then to stay up a little later.
Our agreements say till 6 a.m. Any other questions before I move on to PIT?
And when they, if you're going to speak, please make sure you have the microphone.
Oh, sure, sorry.
We can go on the recording, please.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Sherry.
So what if a site doesn't show up on the cold night shelter activation email that people get or through social media?
If they're not on the list, okay, yeah.
If they're on the list, but they don't.
If they're on the list and they don't show up,
Well,
sorry. So here's the last list.
this is a leading question. It's a question we get a lot of.
There's a microphone right there.
Oh.
Run it in, I'm not. So I know that, during the last activation, there was one site that was not on the first, notice.
Yes.
But that is because we are working with volunteers and we have to make sure that the site, we reach out to them, and sometimes if they can't open for one reason or another, they don't have enough volunteers, they have an illness going on, construction's happening, whatever reason it is, they are relying on volunteers.
Yes.
There's not like a lot of funding for this, so they may not show up, and we cannot put them on that activation list until we get the go-ahead from that site, and then we'll send out another list after that. So I just wanted to clear up some, confusion that may have existed, especially this last activation, that's how that works. We don't run the sites.
Yes, good point, Sherry. Yes, we do rely on the information from those volunteer sites. And before opening,
Well, any permit that, stuff.
no, we don't have any permits for cold night shelters. All right, next is a point in time count and survey. I know you all are familiar with the point in time count. It offers a snapshot of individuals and families experiencing sheltered and unsheltered homelessness in Pinellas County. HUD does require the count to take place every 2 years, but we in our community conduct that survey every year. It helps us to secure funding and resources for our community. There are questions that HUD requires be on the survey, and then we have additional questions as well that we ask. But anyone taking the survey can decide to not answer any question at any time. So I just really wanted to point that out. We do not give participant information from the surveys to law enforcement. So I wanted to make sure that was clear as well. We just want to really dispel any misinformation that may be out there and encourage participation in the survey to ensure that we get an accurate count. We are seeking additional volunteers to help conduct the survey this year. The survey will take place on Thursday, January 29th. That is all day and throughout the entire county. We have several opportunities happening next week for training. So if you have already signed up and registered to volunteer, thank you so much. Emails went out for trainings, which will happen next week. So if you haven't gotten those emails, please let me know. You may want to check your junk folder because that came in through our constant contact, but training is mandatory in order to volunteer. If you have not registered to volunteer yet, please do so and share amongst your networks because we are a little low on the volunteer count this year. So we could use any additional support that you're able to provide. Again, it's all day. The first shift starts at 6 a.m. The last shift at 4 p.m. and it's throughout the entire county. So it is pretty flexible on location and times. Any support you would be able to provide would be amazing. They are 3-hour shifts. And again, you please complete that training if you have already registered to volunteer. And we shared out the flyer, so please feel free to share that within your networks. Really important. And again, we thank you all for the support that you're able to provide. We do have a point in time count planning committee that some of you may be aware of that works on the survey development, training, marketing, deployment, and then helping to coordinate that annual event. So there is a committee involved as well as HLA. Do you all have any questions or concerns about point in time count that you'd like to share that I could bring back to the committee or our special initiatives manager?
The survey is gonna be done, you said 2 shifts?
There's multiple shifts throughout the day. There's a 6 a.m., a 9:30, a 1 p.m., and a 4 p.m. shift.
And 4 p.m. goes to 7 p.m.
Correct.
Okay, so they stop counting at 7 p.m.
7 p.m. is the end of the end of the day.
Okay, because it's hard to get people to work after that because I go to St. Pete Beach and the homeless don't settle down till 7 p.m., 8 p.m. But it's not very many people there, so it's not gonna affect it overall, but homeless people don't settle down till dark. So,
We actually get usually our most amount of surveys in that morning shift. That 6 a.m. shift tends to be the busiest time for us.
it's busy in the morning.
Yeah, it's busy in the morning, and then usually by the afternoon shifts, because I typically work out of in Clearwater, they'll come back and say, oh, a lot of the people that we talked to had already been surveyed earlier in the day, which is great. It's great that we surveyed them, but they had already done them by the time the late afternoon shifts happen.
Could a volunteer request a certain area?
Yes, on that volunteer registration form, it asks what shifts you'd be available in and then what locations throughout the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I'll bring it to you.
Well, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for your support with point in time count. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to a successful count at the end of the month. Thank you. I'm going to sneak out. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Last meeting, we kind of got into some of the stuff that's going on with the Florida legislative session. So I was asked to do a little session on Florida legislative session and things to watch out for. don't be daunted by this packet. I know it's thick. I'm gonna skip through a lot of it, but I wanted to print it out because I think there's a lot of good information that I'm gonna kind of just breeze over in this presentation. And also I'm gonna leave some time for questions at the end. So if you have a question, if you could just like write it down or hold on to it, we'll have a chance for questions that I'm happy to answer at the end. So just to start off with, I know we might all come from varying levels of knowledge of how our state government works and the legislature in particular. So I'm just gonna go over some like basic information. So we're coming from like a shared starting point. So the legislative branch is basically the state's version of Congress, if you're more familiar with that at the federal level. There's a House of Representatives and the Senate, just like in the federal government. And the general rule of thumb is for any bill or proposed law to be passed and made officially into law, it has to go through both the House and the Senate, and then it has to be signed by the governor to become a law. So in addition to writing, drafting and passing laws, the legislature also creates a budget and passes it every single year. In Florida, anybody want to guess how approximately how much money the state of Florida spends every year or is in their budget?
My brain just exploded.
So I think this past year, the budget was about $109 billion for the state of Florida. It sounds like a lot, but it goes to a lot of important programs across the state that help people essentially. And we'll kind of go over that as we go along. So just starting with the Senate, it's the upper chamber, which essentially just means that the districts are bigger, they represent more people. In the Florida Senate, there are 40 senators. They serve 4-year terms, which means that every 2 years, about half of them are up for election. So 20 of the 40 will be up for election here in 2026. And just for information, right now, the Florida Senate has 27 Republicans, 11 Democrats, 1 NPA, as it's listed here, means they're not affiliated with any party. And right now there's 1 vacancy, which sometimes happens if someone resigns or retires, or I think in this case, someone got appointed to the Florida cabinet by the governor. I have a little map for you of Pinellas County and the various Senate districts that are in Pinellas County, if you want to look and see where you're represented. They don't necessarily correspond to county lines, so like if you see District 16, it looks really small. It's because a good portion of that district is actually also in Hillsborough County and a little bit in Manatee County as well. So all the districts are drawn, they may be different geographic sizes, but the idea is that there are 40 districts that cover roughly the same amount of people in every district. I have for you, I actually have pictures and contact information for the 3 senators that come from Pinellas County. And if you look at the bottom, there's actually a link. This is helpful because if you don't know who your senator is, you can just enter in your address where you're living. And it will tell you all the people who represent you. I would encourage you to stay to the top because it lists a whole bunch of judges at the bottom. Not that those folks aren't important, but it just can be overwhelming. The top stuff is generally like the statewide offices and the Florida legislature. Okay, so the Florida House, it's the lower chamber, which means those folks represent less people, which means there's more districts. 120 House districts in Florida, 120 members. These folks only serve 2-year terms, so that means every 2 years, all 120 members are up. You have a say in who gets elected. So that means next November, no matter where you live in Florida, you will have a chance to vote on you're a member of the House of Representatives. And so out of those 120 seats, there are 84 Republicans, 33 Democrats, and there are 3 vacant seats. I have a map of the House districts for you as well, if you want to look at it, to see what you're in, as well as, again, we have the representatives that are in Pinellas County, what district they represent, and some contact information for them, just for you to browse at your own leisure. So, we've talked about legislative session. This is where the state government gets a little bit different than Congress. So for the most part, our Congress people are up in Washington DC almost year round. They have some breaks and stuff, but for the most part, they're up there, they're doing hearings, committee meetings, they're out on the chamber floor debating bills and all that kind of stuff. But most states, including Florida, do the majority of that work in a specified period of time. So in Florida, every year, there are 60 days of the year where all the legislators are together up in Tallahassee, and that's where they do the majority of their work. It doesn't mean that they're not working the other 10 months. It just means that they're not all up there together, like really like moving and advancing legislation. So the good thing about that is most of the year, these folks are actually living here in their districts that they represent. And honestly, outside of legislative session it is way easier to get in contact with your representative because they're here close to you. And also they're a lot less busy than when they're up in Tallahassee. So this year, legislative session starts next Tuesday, January 13th, and it runs through March 13th. So I've listed some committee weeks. Essentially leading up to session, they have various meetings on different topics like criminal justice or fiscal policy or education, what have you, where certain members go up for about a week or so and they do some work on that specific topic. So moving into some of the things to watch for. We talked a little bit last time about some proposals around property tax reform that are happening right now in Florida. I wanted to get a little more in depth, but also this is probably the main thing that they're going to be doing over the next 65 days. It seems to be a priority of the governor. And so I just want to go a little deeper into that. I'm going to be transparent. The organization I work for, Faith in Florida, and myself think it's actually a really bad idea to get rid of property taxes. However, that's my political opinion, and I'm just saying that I'm going to try my best to present both sides. But just know, I just want to be honest about any bias I have as I go into this. And if you have a different opinion, that's totally fine too. And I'm willing to talk about it more. So, how this all started is one of President Trump's major campaign promises is that he wanted to cut the federal spending when he took office. And I'm sure a lot of you who may have been paying attention when he took office, it was all the stuff with Elon Musk, and they were cutting a bunch of programs and stuff. And the whole reason why they were doing that was under what they were saying is they were trying to cut fraud, waste, and abuse. And it's not that those things don't happen in the government, but the way they were doing it is instead of taking a scalpel and trying to find like the instances, they were just taking a chainsaw to a bunch of programs.
Yep.
Governor DeSantis is in the same political party. He's a Republican like President Trump. So he's a political ally of the president. And so he has tried to take a lot of the initiatives of the president and bring them to Florida. What I think is nonpartisan, no matter what your political beliefs are, that is real, that like this also stems from, is there's a recognition that a lot of people are really struggling right now with costs and affordability. And so this is essentially one of the Republican ideas to alleviate costs, is they say, if we get rid of property taxes, we're gonna be saving people money. Now, I want to talk about why it's not quite that simple, as that. So, in Florida, property taxes make up about 43% of like all the day-to-day operations of local government. So that can be schools, parks and libraries, maintaining roads, trash pickup, water utilities, the fire department, police departments, stormwater and flood prevention systems, that's really big here. This is a non-exhaustive list, but these last three, I think, are especially important for the work that we do here. Street outreach teams, those are city employees, they're funded by property taxes. The development of new housing comes from local government revenue. Housing assistance for making sure people can stay in a home if they currently have one, or can find a new one if they need to move, those programs. And just to be fully transparent, HLA receives funding from a number of the city governments across the county. And so to put it simply, if property taxes are cut, if 43% of the budget is cut, services are gonna have to be cut. And there's not really any telling exactly which of those services will be cut. But what I can say is typically grants to nonprofits are one of the first things to go. Not just in homelessness services, just across the board. And then the other thing that's gonna happen, which is why it's not as simple as if I cut property taxes, people will save money. Is because odds are what's gonna happen is that instead of absorbing a 40% cut and just like having to cut all these services, local governments are going to have to raise other types of taxes so that they have money to at least keep some of these programs and services afloat. And the thing about property taxes is that as far as taxes go, people who have the most, who make the most, pay the most property taxes. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You have a whole bunch of property, you have a really nice property on the water that's valued higher, you're gonna be paying higher taxes. Can I?
I was gonna say, the property taxes are based on the millage of their house.
Correct,
But
but that millage goes into the value of what your house is.
Right,
Yes,
that's basically, I know a little bit about this, because when my roommate owned the house, it was
Yeah.
the property taxes in general, which consists of school taxes and some other stuff. And that's.
Can you look for a second?
yeah.
Please, everyone, if you have any questions, please wait till after the presentation is done. So I want to make sure Nick has plenty of time to finish. Okay, thank you.
And so one of the most likely taxes that is going to be raised would be sales tax. And unfortunately, sales tax works almost the exact opposite of property tax. And again, if you think about it, we all have to buy things, no matter how much money we have. We gotta buy food, we gotta buy clothes, they're just like essential supplies. And so, and for the most part, no matter how much income you make, you're kind of roughly spending the same amount on essential items. And so, if you don't have very much money, that means that a higher percentage of what you have is getting paid in taxes than people who have more money than you. And so, getting rid of property taxes or significantly reducing them is taking the cost of all these good services that we talked about, and instead of it being more fairly distributed across income levels, it's actually putting more of the burden on people who have less ability to pay for them. So, that's my whole spiel on property taxes. Okay. So I wanted to just name, last thing about property taxes. I have listed 8 different bill numbers because right now there's 8 different proposals for cutting taxes. It's not really important at this point to go into the specifics of each one. They kind of range from getting rid of property taxes entirely to cutting certain types of property taxes. All of this is gonna be sorted out in legislative session. There's no way they could pass all of these because they conflict with each other, essentially. But what I did want to point out, is you'll see a lot of them say HJR or SJR, and then one of them says HB. So the JR means that it is not a regular bill, it means it's a joint resolution. And what that effectively means is you have to change the Florida Constitution for that to be enacted. And so it's not as simple as just a 50% plus one of each body passing these things, and then it becomes a law. 2/3 of both chambers have to pass any one of these. The governor would have to sign it. And then once the governor signs it, it's still not done. Then it goes on the ballot for voters to vote on. And if voters approve it with over 60%, then an amendment happens in the Florida Constitution, and then it will be enacted. So I just say all of that to say, we're a long way from any actual real changes happening, if they happen at all. Okay, so I didn't want to just talk about property taxes. I wanted to talk about a few things that could actually help lower income people. That are bills that are being considered. These bills have been filed already, so it's possible for them to be passed. So there is a bill that would require landlords to provide functioning air conditioning. Believe it or not, in the state of Florida, you are not required to provide a functioning air conditioning if you're a landlord.
Yep.
There is something called the Pause Act, which would prevent your power or your water being shut off if the temperature is above 90 degrees, or if you're in some sort of state of emergency. There's a bill that would put a cap on the price of insulin and diabetes supplies, so there's only so much you have to pay for it. There's a bill that would also make it easier to build grocery stores in areas that don't have grocery stores. And then the last one I want to highlight, because it kind of goes to this like financial situation of the state. So there's a bill that would close a lot of the loopholes that some of the biggest corporations in our state use, so that they pay less taxes. And so this bill would close some of those loopholes and ensure that people with the most are actually paying what they owe in taxes. Yeah, so those are just some of the examples. Sorry. What I wanted to point out to you, in addition, I have again, the link for, finding out who your representative is, but these two links below, both the Florida Senate and the Florida House have, websites. And if you want to, you can literally go read all the bills that we talked about. And there are probably about 1,000 of them, so I don't think anyone is reading all of them. Normally, like a couple hundred pass each year. But they consider a lot more than that, and on these websites, you can actually read the bills, you can see how they're moving through the process. When there's a vote taken on it, you can see how each of the representatives or senators voted. Did they vote yes or did they vote no? It has a list of all of the people across the state. There's a lot of good information, and there's even links where you can go it's called the Florida Channel. You can watch a lot of the meetings where they're talking about these things. And then last thing before I move into any questions that folks have. Unfortunately, advocating is a little difficult during legislative session. There's not really a way to do it virtually. And since Tallahassee is like 5 hours north of here, the only way to go and speak at those meetings is to go in person. But that said, all of the representatives, all of the senators, they have both district offices here in their districts, and they have offices up in Tallahassee. You can call them, you can email them. If you wanna talk about a specific bill, you can, but you don't have to get that in the weeds if you don't want to. You can simply tell them, what would you like them to do? What would you like to see more of? What do you think there should be less of? That's the easiest way, to get in touch with folks. And finally, I'll just say that if there's interest in this group from meeting and having conversations with some of the legislators, that would be something that, probably after session, if I'm being honest. It's just gonna be hard to get a meeting with folks over the next 2 months. But, perhaps after session, I can reach out. I have relationships with a few of them. And we could either have them attend a meeting or we could have a meeting with them. But that would be something for y'all to decide. So I just rambled at you for like 20 minutes. Questions?
The last bill, do you know which one it is?
What do you mean?
The one about the loopholes and the deductions?
So it is, so something I didn't really talk about is the way that you can look up these bills is they all have like a number. So the HB means it's a House bill, just means it was introduced in the House versus an SB was introduced in the Senate, and then they all have a number. So SB 238, it's in your packet. It says closes tax loopholes used by corporations to pay less taxes. You can go to the Florida Senate site,
Yeah,
and at the top, there's a little bar where you can just type in 238.
I just
and
needed to
it'll
know
take
which
you there.
one it was.
Yeah. Any other? Silas, I think might have had another question, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on your name. Did you have a question?
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
This is an excellent handout with good detailed information, which we dearly needed, for, in relation to, the legislature, how to get in touch with yourself. I was gonna ask about if there are any town meetings or something which we can go to and talk, specifically in person to these legislatures. Last year, the governor made a proposal or wanted to change the property taxes, and nothing was done. Nothing in the legislature. There have been several online articles like impossible choice, Florida taxes rise, DeSantis rips property taxes. Floridians need financial break here. Here, plan would help. Tampa Bay Times. There have been many articles about this. And what I wanted to say is absolutely something needs to be done this year. Because the property taxes are horrendous and the system here in this county is horrible. Even paid off homes require annual payments. This is ridiculous. The governor proposes a long-term plan for this year. I think he wants a constitutional amendment in November on the ballot to abolish property taxes for primary residents. Last year, he proposed a 1,000 homestead property tax rebate, which never came into effect, never was instituted. Most property tax revenue doesn't come from primary homes. It comes from second homes, businesses, investment properties. In addition, this county has a tourist tax and a bed tax. I don't know if you knew, which is on rental rooms. And the revenue there is immense, what they collect. This could be used for the so-called, payments here, which are listed in this one page, for revenue. What is it? Let me find the page.
It was the one where it said
Yeah,
the list of services.
all the things.
Yeah.
That have to be funded. Oh, here it is, school. I have read the enrollment in Florida public schools has declined immensely. Even people are enrolling their children in private schools, which they have to pay for. Trash pickup. Many of the unincorporated areas of the private county are served by private companies, and people have to pay for that out of their own pockets. It doesn't come from property taxes. Water utility service. Pinellas County Utilities is one of the worst non-consumer friendly utilities. That they're horrible. There are a large number of complaints to the business bureau, how they're treating people. And stormwater and flood preventions are part of water utility service they charge for, I noticed, yeah. Other things like parks and libraries, maintaining roads, street outreach schemes, housing development, and so on, funding for age. This is wonderful. But this is my take on the property tax. And there's no reason for them to continue soaking primary homes in taxes each year. So okay.
So, yes.
So that is my take. I see the governor has specific proposals which he wants to institute. And so let's go, and using this, we can apply pressure to these legislators here to enact a reform, really, on this property tax. That's a horrible thing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I'll quickly respond to a few of the points. So first and foremost, the town hall thing that you were talking about, that was, I believe, Silas and Gary went. So as far as town halls, they really only do one or two per year. So those are a little bit limited, but like I said, there's nothing stopping us from reaching out and trying to set up a meeting of our own.
They don't wanna talk to you. They didn't wanna talk.
With those folks. And Silas is right, it helps to have some relationships to actually get them to meet with you. I once had a senator that said he only responded to constituents who wrote him a handwritten letter. Which is an interesting way of representing people.
Yeah.
But then just to respond real quickly, like, yes, people are dealing with a lot of costs. And government is not always perfect in delivering services. I would say that a lot of the time it's cheaper and covers more people than if you leave it up to private entities. Like, I think the difference between water utilities and power utilities is a useful example. Where there are public utilities and there are private electric utilities in the state of Florida. And for instance, Duke Energy, who covers Pinellas County, consistently charges the highest rates for electricity in the country compared to some of these public services. And, even for schools, like you said, part of the reason why there's a declining enrollment is because the legislature a few years ago passed a law that allows public funds to be used to pay for private schools. So what's happening is a lot of people are leaving the public schools and using public dollars to pay for private schools, and it's hurting the public schools and putting money into private schools. So there's a whole lot of things there, because even, yes, you're, like, one thing I wanna say, you're absolutely right on, a lot of taxes do come from second homes, vacation homes, commercial properties, that's absolutely right. And while property taxes for homesteaded properties might help people who just have one home, it's also gonna leave a lot of folks out, because if you rent, you're in one of those non-homesteaded property, and what's your landlord gonna do? They're gonna pass the costs of their increase increase in property taxes to their tenants.
Yep.
Also, there's also a lot of research that says if you get rid of property taxes, immediately the value of homes is gonna shoot up 7 to 9%, which is, again, is really great if you own your home, but most people don't own their home. And it leaves a lot of folks out. So my whole point of talking about this is that there is a lot of things that can be done to reduce costs for people. That actually are geared at helping the folks who have the least, instead of just giving more handouts to people who have a lot of money. But, yeah.
I would like to say something. So there were two bills that just dropped on Monday and Tuesday. Senator Ralston, he's in our handout.
Yeah.
And then, so on the Senate side, and he dropped a bill on Monday, and then on Tuesday, there's a House bill that was about. And, and it focuses on, you know how we see hospitals who will discharge people out into homelessness?
Yes,
Okay.
been there.
And you know, this little personal thing here, 7 years ago, I was in a hit and run and spent a year in a hospital, with my husband, who died several times, but he's alive, he's doing well. I know that I could not walk. And I had my 18-year-old son come down from Georgia and visit me, and they were trying to get me discharged with my 18-year-old son, who does not live with me, right, to take care. And anyway, could not take care of myself at all, and he didn't live with me, and so I know that even when you do have a place to go, which after a year in the hospital, not so much, but yeah, that it could be, there's a push to get people out. There's reasons for that. I understand the healthcare, like, there's a lot of not good reasons. I'm not saying it's okay, but there's some system breakdowns here, right? And so, you know, we've talked with healthcare systems and we've learned about like their process and what we have to offer and everything. But so this bill has to do with any healthcare, an assisted living facility, different institutions that we work together, that they become part, or it would require them to work with the system of care, the COC. It's great, and it needs to happen. The concern, though, that I had to raise when I heard about it was that it puts a lot of more work on the HLA and HMIS system and on the lead agency to do even more work with less funding. And so the question is, are we going to have money for it? And so when I reached out to our Florida Coalition on Homelessness, Brian Cherry is our legislative liaison, talked to him. I said, I have some concerns. I mean, overall, great. Yeah, we love this, but we need to know more. And he's working out a meeting now between me and the Jacksonville office and another lead agency and Senator Ralston. And so, and I know Senator Ralston is very, he's been a great advocate across the board, but I just wanted to let you all know that sometimes Florida Coalition on Homelessness, if you want to track anything that's going on, that's another way to get information. It's how we knew about the Pinellas legislative delegation that came down that town hall where Gary and Silas, Kathleen, me, we all spoke and shared our concerns.
I have one more.
What's the chair?
Last one.
Last one?
Thank you. I have one more comment. This property tax is particularly onerous for first-time homeowners on a resale. The owner who sells has been grandfathered in a long time. But the minute it sells to another person, it's valued up high. And the new homeowner first time has a much larger property tax to face. and this is very onerous. This, it's hard enough to get a home in the first place in today's prices. So can you imagine adding on much higher property taxes on top of it? This is why it's so hard, why the American dream is disappearing in this country, this county and everything. It is very, very hard to own your own place. It's very, very sad.
Well, North got a point about all this, the latest I've just been reading is that it's ironically gonna be a problem. Because eliminating property taxes means actually property costs will, value will rise. And therefore making home ownership even more unaffordable. And at the same time, reducing tax revenues for schools, which is the primary thing for a lot of people. To locate where they wanna live, so. Loss of revenue. Is not gonna make up for the decreased quality in just about everything, schools, roads, bridges,
Yeah,
services.
what about sales
So-
taxes, 12%?
It's not gonna help overall. Anybody but a small percentage of homeowners in this state. And they're trying to make it seem like, yeah, it might be a small percentage, but it's really about affordability, it's not. It's just a shame that. People aren't seeing through. On the longer term picture, which affects everyone, including those who. Have a home. So. I think the good news is, we got a list of representatives. With email addresses, you could email and tell them. Vote no. Period. It doesn't make sense, it's not right, only applies to a small percentage of people. And it's gonna be bad for the economy overall, it's gonna be bad for schools, local services. And bad for affordability. The bottom line, I think of it.
Okay, everybody, let's move on to resource updates, we're starting to get low on time. Does anybody have any new service updates that we can add to our, food pantry and resource list that we have? And we took Riviera off of it, does anybody have anything to add? Okay, well, on that note, our next meeting will be held in the quiet room. We've had the meetings there before with Victoria. One up by the resource, a little bit past the resource desk on the right, you know where it's at. Our next meeting will be there because they're going to be doing taxes in this room. And tearing down at 5 o'clock and then us be ready by 5:30 won't work. So we're gonna have our meeting up there. Just wanna make sure everybody knows that. That way we don't have people walking around, well, where is everybody? We're gonna be up there in that room, okay?
That's just the next week. Is that just the next one? Is that just the next one that's it?
Yeah, the next one comes up, we'll be able to the quiet room. Well, there by the computers, it's right there on the right, just past the resource desk. We'll be in there, you might not have been here at that time.
He was.
Had meetings up there with Victoria.
So tax season goes through April, so I believe February, March and April.
Yes.
So the next 3 meetings will be in that quiet room.
I always been aware of the multiple, sorry. Alright, and if I can, please make sure that when you're going to talk, you have a microphone. And with all due respect, I know some of us have hearing concerns, try not to yell into the mic. We want a clear recording, because everything is recorded, and when you do that, it's very distorted. It's easy to do, I get it, but just try to be conscious of it and try to keep from doing that. Yes, Yeah, you can, I'll have you text that and I'll add that to the. Alright. Alright. Did anybody have any resources in here?
We still want to use.
New places to shower, anything? Okay,
The bubbles will sign back.
yeah, but I'm out regular, but yeah. Mr. Bubbles will be coming back to, First United Methodist, yeah. I have public comment and good news stories. Anything? Got one? Time to be short. Gotcha.
I don't know if anybody heard me at the beginning of the meeting, but it's our birthday. It's my birthday and it's a dog's birthday.
My birthday was last Sunday.
307. I know.
Give them a free pass, Mr. Lopez.
Yeah.
Want to say happy birthday? You too?
A happy baby.
This is you, Mike.
Now moving on, public comment, good news stories, I just looked up a list of, community events, and we got our law enforcement guy we worked on last year. We have sports services listings, legal assistance listings, all on one page, so it's all on the community events site. Highly recommend you guys check it out. Use the phone right now, it's all just scroll down, see what makes your interest and click on it. We have changes to, vote changes to, PSDA. We have, let's see, workforce skills, housing, dislocated worker program. It's gonna be a lot more of that with AI, I think. I think it's a great idea. So, want to make sure on the list, we might get the future meetings, useful meetings. We've got some coming up. And finally, what else you see, the meeting calendar. Okay, there we go. In January coming up. We have this, the resources.
No, we just finished.
The big volunteer training we talked about, that's on the 14th. And the pit itself is 3 weeks from today. So. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3 weeks from today is the actual pit count, so we gotta. Get people trained by apparently the 14th. And get out there. And make it count this year, because last year was kind of depressed because of the homeless encampment law. And I think this year it needs to be better, more accurate, I should say. Because I think last year was probably undercounted because of that, and people got, I guess the legislation got too excited, homeless population is going down because of the anti-camping law. Because people were afraid, that's why.
Yeah.
So this year. We're hoping to get a more accurate count. I wanna make sure everybody knows, be counted.
Yeah.
You've got to be counted. Get everybody who's on the street or just couch surfing. Gotta be counted. Because it's important for long-term success of transitioning people from being homeless to an actual home. Let's see what else. And we're at 6:43, we're actually, we're speeding ahead right now. So I guess we can open it up for comments. And I just want to make everything clear that this year is critical. I want everybody to be involved and remember the pit is important. And your participation in that is important. And the participation here, in this meeting and the COC is important. If you got ideas, just let them flow. Because you never know, it's just one idea might spark another idea that helps four people. Get involved and get help. Now. So, let's open it up for a little bit of comments, and be a little, this thing. Oh.
In last month's meeting, it was brought up about NOPO, was withdrawn pending, legal challenge. And it was distressing to know that they intend to cut, funding or grants for permanent housing. This is very distressing. Are there any updates? On, on the HUD, have they decided and what they were gonna do? Okay.
There have been so many updates. It's been fun to keep track of. So it still is in port. Right before I left to come to this meeting, HUD did follow the court requirement. They've been working with the National Alliance to End Homelessness on, and the other plaintiffs. So the other plaintiffs would be the people who want to maintain the funding as it was. And HUD was the defendant. Today, it's a little confusing to know exactly what they're going to do. At the moment, though, my read of it, there's been 2 NOPOs that have been released so far in the last couple of months since November 13th. The second NOPO was for public review. It was not enforceable. It was not, and HUD said, it's not enforceable, can't be implemented unless the court says it's okay. And so, like I said, HUD's been working with the others on this case. And today they released something that I still have to read more thoroughly to understand. Basically, the plan is a year and a half ago, the last funding opportunity that we put forward for the whole COC was done in 2024, the very end of 2024. And it was intended to go for 2 years. Basically, the next, so 2025, we would have renewals for permanent housing. That is what's, where the decisions are being made right now. And it sounds like that may be honored, but I can't say for sure certain. But right now, we're on pause. We don't know exactly what's happening. We know we don't have any true like directive or application or process in place just yet. HUD said that they're gonna be dropping something tomorrow with instructions. So I'll be able to know more tomorrow and then read over it through the weekend and figure out what's next.
I had a question about what you were talking about, with the count, how do you make sure that you get calendar to those people who need to or whatever do?
Gary's on the PIC planning committee. I know I attend. I don't know if he would be able to answer just as well, but there are a lot of providers who participate in the planning committee, and then all the feedback from Leak is taken there as well. So wherever they have these places called deployment centers, and so those areas and street outreach is involved. So people who work closely with people who are living off the street are the people who figure out where the hot spots are, where are the areas where we're gonna find the most people to interview.
That's the objective of that day.
All right. I like how we got everything on the agenda done on time. We had a good discussion on legislation and the point of contacting legislatures. Because remember, on this packet, we got the phone numbers and emails. Do contact them. because it's important. That they make, that they know in Tallahassee, the decisions they make affect us here in Pinellas County, in this neighborhood, in this library. With that said, I look forward to seeing everybody next month. And hope everybody stay safe, pay attention to the cold weather shelter announcements. Because winter is not over, despite being full of sleep weather now. It gets come any time, so be careful out there and see you all next month. And the meeting is adjourned. Oh,
Everybody at the back of your pamphlet, you'll find a printed version of all our meeting dates. If you're not tech savvy to install the ICS file, please take that page home, magnet to your refrigerator. And that way you'll always have a hard copy of when the meeting dates will be, please. Yeah. And if nobody said it yet, meeting is adjourned.
Oh, I have one. Update. Hey, Cruz.
Print it out.